Welcome back to Yes, I'm Adopted, Don't Make It Weird. Today we are going to be talking about sadness and how all parties should react to sadness.
You said that really happy.
I did. I seemed really joyful about sadness. So let's talk about being sad, Davo. How sad are you?
Very.
Very.
We did it.
Yeah. How are you coping with it?
Crying a lot is typically how I would do that.
Oh. So
How do you just ease into this
I
one?
don't know. This is an interesting topic. So if you guys haven't checked out our podcast yet, first of all, go to yesimadopted.com/podcast and you'll be able to see we have 2 episodes up there right now. And we're going to be doing every other week, every other Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. We're going to be unveiling them on the world for people to be able to listen to on their commutes and workouts and all that other stuff. So we're really excited about that. But last week we talked about anger and how to deal with anger and, are adoptees justified in their anger. So that was a real interesting conversation. But during that, and I want you guys to go listen to it, during that we talked about sadness as well.
Yeah.
And how sadness is not something that our culture is good at embracing.
Right.
Why is that?
I don't know. I don't have a why for that. Like, there's no... we're just bad at it.
We're just bad at sad.
As a whole, we're bad at sad. That's a t-shirt right there.
Right?
You did it.
Because everybody's, like, hey, don't be sad, be happy instead.
Right. And then we all default to angry.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, angry is generally acceptable. Whereas, because we know what anger is, right? But when we have sadness, it's just like it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable to be around somebody. It's
who's just sad and...
right?
Nobody wants to be around that.
You're just going to do that?
Nobody wants to be around that face and just...
Right? Okay. So now what?
I can't do it. I can't do it.
Right? And sad is kind of hard to empathize with.
Yep.
Whereas anger is really easy to empathize with.
Crowds of people can get behind anger.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, let's go. Let's take down whatever it is that's making you angry.
Right, but you don't have, riots of sad people.
That would be terrible.
Like in the streets.
Everybody get together, link arms, and just cry.
Makes you think about, a team. Okay, so your team is in the championship or whatever,
right?
And then they lose, and everybody's generally upset about that, but rather than be sad, we riot.
Yeah. We're angry at the other team. We're angry at the team we're rooting for.
Because there's no way to just be sad about it as a general population. Hey, they lost the thing, and we wanted them to win the thing. Ah!
But when we're talking about sadness, in this particular case, we're kind of talking about the adoptee themselves.
Right.
And so adoptive parents out there, this is going to be a very heavy educational piece for you guys. Again, this is going to be our thoughts, our opinions, our research. And so if you have something to the contrary, keep it to yourself. No, I'm joking. No, we would love to be able to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments below, or better yet, send us a private message if it's something that you feel is a little controversial. So please do that. So let's talk about the sadness in adoptees and what they should do and what they have to do in order to get through it.
Okay. We've talked about grief on several occasions.
Yeah.
And grief is something that needs to be embraced, right? It's not something none of the emotional states are really something that you should probably live in, right? You don't really want to stay there forever, but this is something you have to go through.
Yeah,
in order
has
to come
to be
to
a
the other
phase.
side of it. Now, specifically, I remember... I don't know. I remember middle school, right? We talk about the Family Tree Project all the time, but that's because it is such an integral moment for a lot of adoptees where you look at that history or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And it all just kind of comes folding in on you. Bleh, here you go. You're not living the life that you were maybe going to be living, and here's all of that, and also pile on all of your self-worth issues, and also pile on the hormones that you're having as a teenager,
so many
and
hormones.
all of these things all at once, and then what do? And I remember looking at that page for the first time, and just sobbing. like just
lost it.
uncontrollably. I lost it. Like everything about that is clear to me to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember, and it wasn't until after I'd finished the project, right? So I'm looking at it, and I finished the project, and I think on my family tree we decided to add a little cloud or some crap. Like it was up here, and like all I have is my birth mom's name. I don't have anything else. There's no other identifying information. It's just that. And so here's the tree. And it's got my family stuff on it, and then here's just this innocuous cloud.
Just looking down on the family tree
It's
from
up,
above.
and it's up here, and it was at that point that it fully hit me, like one moment, right? Bam! Here it is. You're adopted, and that means that there is someone out there that you're related to that you'll probably never know.
Right.
And for whatever reason, she didn't want to or couldn't raise me.
Right.
And all of that. All at once,
and
like I had a breakdown that lasted probably 3 hours, like just sobbing.
Were your parents there for that?
And so my mom was there.
Okay.
Dad was there, but Dad is like me in the point that he's really. My father was one of the most supportive people, but like just. I don't know. Emotionally, he was always just kind of like, "Yeah, there you go. That's happening for you."
That's a thing.
There were rare occasions
like someone
I saw
I know.
him be not like I am today. And but so here's the thing. My mom, here's what she did that I think was so profound, which was nothing. She sat in the room with me, and I think she just rubbed my back and didn't offer anything. As far as like, she didn't offer advice, and she didn't offer instruction, and she didn't tell me that I needed to get over it, or I don't even think she was like, they're there. Right? It was just presence. That's all it was. That my mom was present with me through this whole ordeal, and was continually just always available.
Right.
Whenever I needed her to be available. And those are the years that are awful anyway. So I'm like, 13 years old and don't want to be emotional, but everything is emotional.
Right, and you don't know what to do.
And what do I do? And I need to try to assert myself as a human being anyway. And it was just a ton of stuff all at once.
Yeah.
Which then I don't remember processing through again. Like at that point, it was like, oh, okay, well, here it is. I've accepted that there's stuff I'm never gonna know. Right, as a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And then as a 30-year-old, when my mom passed, and a couple years later my dad passed, and then all of this stuff again, right? It all comes coming up again, and it's crazy, and it's difficult, and there's like adoption stuff on top of like my normal stuff, and it's all like here, and again, just like to this day, I'm not an emotional person for the most part, but there are times when grief is just so ninja-esque.
Right.
It just pops up.
Yep.
And you're like,
oh, I wasn't prepared for that one.
Didn't see that coming.
Oh.
And and I've talked a long time here, but I have one more thing to add to this, which is that I have a vernacular for grief, right? Like when I talk about grief and mourning, I typically refer to mourning as the loss.
Yep.
And I'm referring to grief as the loss of what can't be anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So like when I grieve, it's all these things that no longer are and no longer can be. It's not like what I've lost, it's the potential is gone.
Yeah.
And so the potential as a child to be raised by my birth family was gone. And there's always this part of us that's like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting? Or that's weird that, these integral people in my life aren't here.
Yeah.
And, to this day, like the big ones are, holidays and family events and stuff like that. And I'm like, my parents would have been just phenomenal grandparents.
Yeah.
And I looked at our Christmas tree last year, right? And just was like, oh, I can't do it. Like, but you have to.
Yeah.
And that's the point, is that you have to do it.
You have to go through that process. There's what is it, the 5 stages of grief? Is that what it is?
Yeah, they say that.
Yeah, you have to go through this process in order to become whole again, in order to heal from that. And it's the same thing with adoption. Like, adoptees, you're going to go through a process. You're probably already going through a process, but you don't know that it's an actual process. We tend to get stuck in one stage or another. For me, I got stuck on anger.
Right.
Where it manifested itself in so many different ways that it had, I thought it had nothing to do with adoption. I wasn't angry at my parents for adoption or my birth parents or anything like that. Right. I was just an angry human being. And I took it out on everybody and everything.
Right.
So if you want to hear a couple stories, go check out the podcast on that one. It's interesting.
There's some good ones.
Yeah. But for me, sadness was one of these, I don't know, it was an inconvenience.
Sure.
Being sad.
Yeah.
That I just kind of pushed down, and then it manifested into anger. The sadness came like in kind of waves every once in a while, but I kept telling myself I can't be sad. Because if I'm sad, then I'm going to bring that upon other people. Anger, I had no problem bringing on other people. That was like second nature to me at the time. But sadness, though, I never wanted to inconvenience anybody around me with my feelings. Whether it was my parents, whether it was my friends, anybody close to me, I just kept that sadness bottled up. And I think that's what a lot of adoptees tend to do.
Sure.
Is they don't want to inconvenience. We've talked about this, and we've heard your guys' voice, adoptees out there, and parents. Adoptees hate inconveniencing people.
Right.
But there's a process that you have to go through in order to heal from it. I don't know if we're ever going to fully get to the other side of that process.
Right.
Which is a weird, terrible thing to think about.
I think we're better.
We are better.
Like you look at the stages of grief, which is an interesting thought, absolutely, to be like, okay, so we talk about grief when we talk about loss, but like adoptees have all experienced grief,
Yeah,
and are all experiencing that loss, but just in a completely different way, in a completely different time frame. But the end of that is acceptance.
Yeah,
right. It's not like joy.
Yeah,
and it's not like wonderful rainbows and butterflies or whatever.
No.
But like you get through the different stages of denial and anger and bargaining and those sorts of things, and what you end up with is acceptance.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. The point is that's where the maturity comes from. We've learned that all these different things are necessary, and we had them, but none of them were to be dwelt in. Mm-hmm. None of them were designed to that's not where we live. Right. But we have to go through it and just embrace that this is happening right now. And then at the end of that, you just accept where things are, and that's when you're able to move forward, and that's when you're able to push.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
We have some great conversation. We have some people that did not have the best childhood and did not have a great, adoption experience.
Sure.
And they bring up the fact, like anger is justified in their case, and completely anger is justified. Sadness is justified. You have to allow yourself to go through these things. But again, like David was saying before, you can't stop there. Right. If that becomes your mode at that point, you're not growing.
Right.
You've just stalled out, and you're just kind of existing at that point. It's a terrible thing to say, but that's kind of how it is, because as human beings, we are meant to grow. Right. We're meant to continue learning, continue evolving to a certain point and changing. Like, we are supposed to continue on. And so if we let it stop us, and that's our roadblock, that's not what we are here for.
Right. Which then brings us to, I think, the harder side of that equation, which is, as parents, it's really difficult. It's much more difficult, right? Like, it's much more difficult to let our kids hurt. Mm-hmm. And it's much more difficult to let our kids be sad than it is for us to be sad. Yeah. But even, so as the parent, as the adult, you got to deal with yourself. Yep. So first do that.
Deal with your problems.
But then with our kids, and we have kids, right? And so, like, I mean, I've seen my kids sad, and there's nothing I like less than that, right? Like, I genuinely, it's like, oh, this hurts to have to see. It hurts more to see them grieve than it hurts to see me grieve, right? Like, the kids took the loss of our cat, not even as hard as I think as I did, because it was right after we lost my dad. Uh-huh. But like but they recognized that they didn't see Grandpa all that often, but they saw the cat every day, and to see them be sad about the cat, right? Like, this is stupid, but it's also how I feel about it, and it's like I'm like, no, we'll get 1,000 cats, like, but also. They're young, but it's still a point where I'm saying to them, look, this is how life works. Yep. Like, everything that lives eventually dies. Yeah. And that's something that we all have to come to terms. Like, that's humanity.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about mortality and and legacy and coming to grips with that type of stuff later on.
And
that's a hard one.
I mean,
though.
nobody taught us how to do that.
No, and the people still don't.
Right?
Because it's like people are terrified to think like that, and so they just don't.
Right. And it's hard to accept.
Yeah.
That everything is finite, and the most we can do is, we're going to drive this point probably into the ground and then some more. But the point is to continually get better.
Yep.
To
Incremental improvements.
To be better tomorrow than you were today.
Yeah.
And to be better today than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like for you, then by all means pursue that. But with parenting especially, like I don't envy my parents.
Right.
And I don't, necessarily envy any other of the
Any
parents
of you out
that
there.
are out there. But I get that. We
Yeah.
get that because we have kids. And it's hard to let them hurt.
Yep.
But especially, and I'm going to say this to the adoptive parents that are watching, it's important that you do.
Yeah. It is.
You don't have to provide advice, and you don't have to provide direction or really anything other than that you need to stay present.
Yeah.
Through the whole thing and allow it to happen, and trust that your kids are resilient enough to come out the other side of that in the long run with acceptance.
Yep. That's a hard one.
Ugh,
That's a hard one, man.
that is difficult.
Yeah. But I think what you said your mom did for you was one of the more profound things in adoption parenting.
Yeah.
Just being present.
Yeah.
During that time, letting you go through the process because you're mentally figuring out what's next afterwards. You're processing everything that's coming in. And instead of, like trying to deter the sadness, trying to make you happy, cheer you up, letting you actually fully process, but also being fully there. That's key. So parents out there, please take that in consideration next time your kid gets really upset, really sad, really angry, really anything. Just be present with them and know that they're strong enough to get through it. That's what we do. We raise adults. We don't raise children. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
We could go on all of these topics probably indefinitely.
For so long.
And that's why there's a podcast.
So make sure you guys check out that podcast. Go listen to the one about anger recently.
We want to thank you for supporting us and for watching the show and commenting and engaging in our community. It's been kind of baffling a little bit to see how much everybody has grown together and supports one another within the community.
It's so cool to be able to see.
Yeah, it's been
so cool.
It's been very awesome, and especially over this last couple of months, the way that you guys have supported us in just so many ways has been tremendous, and the opportunities that we're having to continue to educate about all adoption topics has just, they've been exponential, and it's been really cool to be a part of that.
Yep.
So we thank you for that. For those that are joining us kind of recently, we do this every week, and we have more stuff that we're expanding into doing. And for all of you, if you are receiving value, if you see value in what we're doing, we do ask you to consider partnering with us with either, you can check out our support page on the yesimadopted.com/support, and where we have a couple of options as far as helping us keep the lights on and keep the show going, as well as then expanding into new areas and doing some cool new things that we
podcast.
Like we're launching the podcast and getting our website optimized, and then we'd love to be able to get out and meet more of you.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Please consider partnering with us on either a monthly basis or a one-time basis on the website.
So thank you guys so much for joining us on today's episode of Yes, I'm Adopted. Don't make it weird. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We put out videos constantly because there's so much education that needs to be taught to people. And so if you know somebody that could benefit from this video today, please make sure to share it or, just tag them in the video because we like that too. So, we will see you guys on the weekend update. We thank you for joining us. Peace out. This is still my outro.
That's still your outro?
Still my outro.
You're going peace out?
Peace out, y'all! Peace out, homie. Peace out, Girl Scout.
I'm going to continue to just sigh. and just kind of sit here. I think this has been our outro. Is you do some weird thing and then I sit here and then the credits roll.